Right. Hi. If you, remember, this is still a thing that I intended on doing. And last time I made a video, it was January or February. It was pretty cold out. Now it's almost 100 degrees. And last time I said, I'm not going to say that I'm back, because I don't know if I will be back, because I said that last time, and that was 2 months ago, and that was in my January recording. It's now July. Oh boy. Everything that you see on this table right now had to be thoroughly dusted before I could make this video. And all of the movies that I watched last summer in preparation for this series of reviews have kind of fallen out of my brain. And I've been doing a lot of stuff lately that I'm gonna fill you all in at the end of the video. Don't worry. I'm gonna fill you in. We're gonna have a great time. I got some new pop figures. There's even more that I haven't shown you. There's like three more that I haven't shown you guys yet. But I got Green Arrow from Arrow, which used to be a good show. Now it's not. Aquaman, The Flash, which is still a good show. I have to watch the second season. And I got Rocket Raccoon and Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a movie that no one expected to be good and everyone fell wildly in love with. So we will discuss later on. But let's get into the review. If you recall, which I barely did, we are talking about Casablanca today, which is a movie that if you're older, you've seen it for sure. And if you're younger, if you're around my age, chances are you haven't seen it, nor have you even heard of it. Because the film is from 1942. It's directed by a man named Michael Curtiz, or Curtiz, I don't know. His name is Curtis with a Z instead of an S. I'm actually not familiar with any of his other work, but if you made Casablanca, that is plenty of merit in my book. And it stars Humphrey, Bogart, Ingrid, Bergman, Paul Henreid, Claude Rains, Peter Lorre, and Dooley Wilson. The plot follows a man named Rick Blaine, played by Humphrey Bogart, who keeps a cafe in Casablanca, which is a city in French Morocco, during the Nazi occupation of Europe. Now, Morocco is a French territory, so it was kind of a hotspot for Europeans that were fleeing from the Nazi occupation. They got to stay in a similar culture to that of Europe, and from there they could obtain safe passage to the United States away from the troubles of the brewing World War. So, one night, a woman named Ilse Lund, who is played by Ingrid Bergman, enters the cafe with a man named Victor Laszlo, who is wanted by the Germans. The story revolves around hidden letters of transit that could be used to reach the United States, and it also tells of the history between Rick and Ilse through a series of flashbacks. That's really all that I can give away regarding the plot to this film, because even though it is old, and with old films you think, simple stories, mostly love stories, and while this is certainly a love story of sorts, it's different than your traditional Hollywood love story that you would see during that time, and even more so than you would see today. The quality of those types of films, in my opinion, has gone down tremendously, but this really is a classic Hollywood film. When you think of Hollywood films, you think of movies like Casablanca, or you think of something like Sunset Boulevard, which I have reviewed in the past during this same series of reviews. You've had about a year to see that one, and if you haven't seen it yet, please do yourself a favor and watch it. I've seen it twice. I actually watched it again since I made that review last July. So there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about with Casablanca. First thing is how timeless this film is. Oh my goodness. This is the definition of classic Hollywood cinema. Humphrey Bogart is, the classiest actor ever, at least in his perceived on-screen persona. I don't honestly know much about how he was as a person, so that can be a completely inaccurate assessment of him for all that I know. But he is fantastic in this film. He does a great job of playing this really elusive, kind of socially detached nightclub owner. He's very cynical, as is described by pretty much every character that he encounters in the film. But, you know that he has a personality deep inside of him that he's kind of shut away and put up this persona of this really cold nightclub owner that's just kinda... He doesn't stick his neck out for nobody, which is something you'll hear him say every couple of minutes in the film. One other thing I want to talk about is the music. The music to this film is great. It is this grand, majestic, orchestral score with, lots of loud timpani rolls and big brass sound. But there's also, with it being set mostly in a cafe or nightclub from that time. I don't think they really had nightclubs in the 1940s. But it's being set in a cafe, so you have these brass bands and singing piano players going about their thing, and you hear that music, and that music does a really good job of setting the stage for the stuff that's going on in this movie, and the music is fantastic. Check the movie out, not just for that, but that is definitely a plus to seeing it, and I would highly recommend you listen to the music, Pay attention to that when you're watching the movie. You'll really, really enjoy it like I did. Another thing is how quotable this film is. Now, it's not quotable in the same way that a film like Pulp Fiction is, where you can sneak stuff into casual conversation. I suppose you do that with some of this, but a lot of really iconic lines that have been used throughout films in the future, or not, the future from 1940. So over the past 70 years, they've used lines from this film and snuck it in. One of them, play it again, play as time goes by, play it again, Sam, play it again, Sam, play as time goes by, said by Ilsa to Sam, who's played by Dooley Wilson. He is the piano player at Rick's Cafe Americana. That's actually commonly misquoted. Most people say that Ilsa's line is, play it again, Sam, play as time goes by. But they'll be wrong, and now if they say that, you can correct them, and you have me to thank, because you know more about movies than your friends do now. Another one, Round Up the Usual Suspects. I'm actually a fan of that one, because Usual Suspects is on my wall, and it's a fantastic film, and go see that, and then come see my review of that, which doesn't exist yet, but I hope it does. I really want to talk about The Usual Suspects. Another thing is, I think that this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, is a line said towards the end of the film. You've probably heard that at one point or another. It came from Casablanca, and a really, really great classic line that is really more a part of a classic scene is in all the gin joints and all the towns in all the world, and she walks into mine, which is essentially Rick's reaction to him seeing Elsa in his club. Not gonna say too much there, but if you ever hear that, then you know it's from Casablanca. Another thing I want to talk about is the sets. The sets in this film are phenomenal. As you may or may not know, back in the 1940s and kind of this golden age of Hollywood, no one shot on location like you see today. You have movies like The Lord of the Rings and Braveheart being made in places like Scotland and New Zealand, and they have these fantastic landscape shots, great cinematography, which certainly helps the film, but it's also very impressive that they were able to recreate the feeling of an entire city or an entire country on a Hollywood backlot, which is what they did here with Casablanca. They pretty much recreated these busy market squares and city streets in Casablanca, all by reconstructing them in these Hollywood backlots and studios. Rick's Cafe is a fantastically designed set that feels very, very authentic and fits perfectly within the atmosphere set up by yet another film set. So, just something I want to talk about there is the use of sets, how effectively sets are used in this film, and, pay attention to that. If you're ever watching an older film, any of Charlie Chaplin's old stuff, again, Sunset Boulevard, which is kind of an inside look at the industry at that time, so you kind of see how these sets are being used. And, of course, Casablanca used almost all sets, the whole thing was filmed in Hollywood, as films used to be. Another thing I want to talk about is the camera work. I know there's lots of stuff that we're discussing, but the camera work in this film is really, really good. Now, I'm not talking, Birdman, the Revenant, Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu tracking shots sort of thing. No, it's not like that, but it's just effective at portraying mood, showing characters, directing the viewer. There's a scene in which three characters are in a bit of an intense confrontation, and the whole scene is shot using alternating headshots of the actors and actresses in the scene. It'll go to one person's head, and then another person's head, and then another person's head, and they might not be the person talking. It'll be showing their reaction to what someone else is saying. Or you'll have these really long shots of people sitting at a table and talking about stuff in the cafe. So you're getting stuff like that from an old film. Again, this film's over 70 years old at this point. And I just thought that the camera work was really well done and really commendable, and I wanted to bring that up and discuss it. So now, you've heard what I think of this film. I think that it's pretty darn good. We're going to move my Lamborghini over here and see what Leonard has to say. Alright, buddy. What do you got? I haven't opened this. There's still dust clinging to this book. Oh dear. Can we guess what he's going to give it? Here's a hint. It's old, so he gives it 4 stars. Yeah, he gives it 4 stars. Everything is right in this World War II classic of war-torn Morocco, with elusive nightclub owner Rick finding old Flame and her husband, underground leader Henry, among skeletons in his closet. That is really disjointed. Rains is marvelous as dapper police chief, and nobody sings as time goes by like Dooley Wilson. 3 Oscars include Picture, Director, and Screenplay. Our candidate for the best Hollywood movie of all time. Spawned short-lived TV series in the 1950s and 1980s. Also shown in computer-colored version. A few things I want to talk about there. If you see the colored version to this film, you have a problem. Don't be afraid to watch it in black and white. In fact, don't be afraid to watch any movie in black and white. Some of the best films I've ever seen have been in black and white. You got Dr. Strangelove, shot in black and white. Psycho, shot in black and white. Sunset Boulevard was shot in black and white. Pretty much every Charlie Chaplin movie ever made was shot in black and white, and he's fantastic. So, don't be afraid to watch it in black and white. Don't actively seek out a computer-colored version, which will essentially just appear tinted yellow for the 2-hour runtime. Don't be afraid, Go ahead, watch a black and white movie. They're pretty good. Another thing he said, that this is a contender for the best Hollywood film of all time. I would absolutely agree with that, because it was made and produced in Hollywood, California, which at the time was the absolute heart of the film industry of the world. America was making movies, and that was where they were being made and distributed all over the place. So I would agree that that's probably the best Hollywood movie ever made. I actually don't know the result to that poll. If you were wondering where this film places on other lists besides IMDb's Top 250, AFI, or the American Film Institute, has it placed at number 3 for greatest films of all time, just under The Godfather and Citizen Kane. Some other things he said: this won Best Picture in 1942, as well as Best Director for Michael Curtiz, which I would agree, the direction is fantastic, as we talked about, with the use of sets and camera work, and it also won Best Screenplay, which, for those of you who don't know, is the script to the film, what the actors are saying, how they're saying it, and what the camera is doing, where it's focusing, stuff like that, is the screenplay. So, to end this review, is the film any good? Yes, it is very good. It's a great film, and it is a classic film. If there was one word I would use to describe Casablanca, it's classic. It's iconic. Those are 2 words, but both of them fit it perfectly. This is a classic Hollywood picture that everyone should make an effort to see at least once in your life. You're doing yourself a disservice if you don't see it. Is it deserving of its placement? I would say so. As good as this film is, I think that over the past 74 years, better films have been made. There are people that will disagree with me, and that's fine, and I see where you're coming from, but there are better movies that have been made since 1942. So, I would say that it's perfectly deserving of its placement here on the list around the number 30 spot. Keep in mind the list that I'm going off of, just so no one gets annoyed in the comments and whatnot. This list is from January of 2015, so it is effectively a year and a half old. I'm keeping this list because I have hand copied it onto loose leaf paper and taped it to my wall. That took a few days, alright? I could have probably just done it in one sitting, but I didn't want to do that. So I did that in a few days and taped that up there, and I'm not really looking forward to doing it again, but I will probably next January. I will update the list, assuming that this series is done by then, which I want it to be, but, you know, school and whatnot coming up. I'm going to be busy, but I'm going to probably start pre-recording stuff in the summer. Way off topic there, but yes, Casablanca is absolutely deserving of its placement here on IMDb's Top 250 Greatest Films of All Time list. Thank you. Now, a few things I want to talk about before I leave to kind of fill you in on what's been going on over the past 7 months. As you may have noticed, A Feast for Crows is sitting here. That's there for continuity reasons. I finished this book in 1 week. In January, I finished it. I read A Feast for Crows in a week. It is probably the worst book in the A Song of Ice and Fire series. That being said, it's essentially perfect. They're the best books I've ever read, and I've since finished the series and watched Season 6 of Game of Thrones. My God, Cersei, you're crazy for what you did in that finale. That might be the best television episode I've ever seen. That was probably better than The Constant, Through the Looking Glass, Ozymandias, all great TV episodes. It was better than those. Alright? Game of Thrones, you've outdone yourself. Another thing that you may have noticed is I have some new books on here. The first is the Film Buff's Bucket List by Chris Duckman. He is I can call him a fellow YouTube film critic. He has, you know, about 600,000 more subscribers. That's going in the wrong way. 600,000 more subscribers than I do, so I'm not exactly on the same tier as him, but I'm a big fan of his. So Chris, if by any chance you're watching this, keep up the good work. Like what you're doing, love your book, you've got good stuff in there. Another thing you might have read, this was given to me by a friend of mine, is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I'm about 140 pages into it. It is quite good. I read some Stephen King a while back, read Salem's Lot. None of his books have been adapted into good films. This is actually being adapted into a film in a number of months. I'm not entirely sure when, but it's supposedly pretty scary from what they have going there so far. As I said earlier, I stopped watching Arrow. I just couldn't stand it anymore. It wasn't good. Aquaman has really no affiliation with film. I haven't seen Batman v Superman yet, so don't ask me for my thoughts on Batman v Superman. What I'm probably going to do is find a way to rent the R-rated Ultimate Edition, because that's what I did with Watchmen. I have never seen the theatrical release of Watchmen, and I never plan on it. I own the director's cut on Blu-ray, and will only watch that version of the film, because it's 3 hours long, and it's wonderful. I love it. It's hanging on my door over there. What else? I really want to start watching The Flash again. I watched like halfway through Season 2. Never finished it. Yeah, and another thing you may have noticed, I have a new poster, Donnie Darko, which is a great kind of cult indie film. Highly recommend that you watch it if you can find a way to see it. I actually had to buy it on Amazon. Maybe you can rent it now. I don't think it's on Netflix, but if you ever come across a chance to watch the theatrical release of Donnie Darko, not the director's cut, the theatrical release of Donnie Darko, please take that chance. And I'm thinking of completing this wall over here and adding 2 new posters. Probably Game of Thrones and Braveheart is probably what I'm going to do. But I don't know, if anyone has any groundbreaking ideas, feel free to let me know. This has been an exceptionally long video, but I'm happy to finally be back doing this. My next review will be Life is Beautiful. I haven't seen it yet, which is not good. That's one of the first times this has happened. But I need to watch that before I can do this next review, obviously. So, that will be coming hopefully Tuesday, is what I'm hoping for there. And then the day after, what do I have written there? Alright, and then now a week from today, hoping to get out Leon the Professional, which I will have to watch again, because I also saw that a year ago. Jeez, I'm behind. Alright, thank you for watching, thank you for your attention, you've been fantastic, and, jeez, this has been 20 minutes. Bye-bye.